treasures that could be sitting right in your change jar. Our very first coin on this incredible list is the 1948 Lincoln wheat penny. At first glance, it might not look like much, especially in a full bad condition, where the details are worn down, the color has darkened, and years of circulation have left scratches and marks across its surface. But here's where things get exciting. Even in a condition that most collectors would normally pass over, this penny can still hold surprising value. Why? Because the 1948 wheat penny is part of an era that many collectors are desperate to complete, and certain conditions, errors, and varieties can send its price soaring into shocking numbers. The history of this coin takes us back to the post-World War II years. America was booming, families were rebuilding, and pennies like this were in the pockets of hard-working men and women across the country. The obverse, or front, of the coin proudly displays Abraham Lincoln's bust, a design first introduced in 1909 and still in use today. On the reverse, the classic wheat ears frame the words 1 cent, giving it the nickname wheat penny. The Philadelphia Mint struck hundreds of millions of these coins in 1948, which might make you think they're common. But here's the shocker, very few survive in pristine condition, and even fewer with rare errors that make collectors' jaws drop. Now, let's talk value. In a full bad condition like the one we're holding, most people might dismiss it as just a penny, may be worth a couple of cents at most. But that's the mistake. Even well-worn examples can fetch interest if they have unique characteristics. A typical 1948 penny in heavily circulated condition may bring in around 10 to 50 cents. Not bad for something most folks would toss aside. But here's where the suspense builds. Move up just one step in grade to fine or very fine condition, and suddenly, collectors might pay $5 to $15 for it. That's already dozens of times its face value. Now imagine the same coin in an uncirculated state, with bright luster and sharp details. Prices climb steeply, often reaching $100 to $250, depending on the grading. And here comes the wow factor. If you find a 1948 penny with a rare mint error like an off-center strike, a double die obverse, or even a clipped planchet, the value skyrockets. Some error coins from this year have sold for shocking amounts, with prices landing in the tens of thousands. And in cases of near-perfect and circulated condition combined with the dramatic mint error, collectors have paid well into six figures. Yes, you heard that right. A single cent turned into $450,000 or more, simply because of rarity and collector demand. So, how do you spot a potentially valuable 1948 penny? Look carefully at the date for doubling, check the edges for unusual clips or shapes, and examine the strike. Weak or off-center strikes can indicate rare mint mistakes. Even if your coin is in bad condition, an error can override everything and make it a treasure. This is why it pays to never overlook a humble wheat penny. That 1948 coin sitting in a drawer or jar could be worth more than you ever imagined. And remember, this is just the beginning, because the next coin on our list is even more unbelievable in both rarity and value. Next up, we have a coin that might already be sitting unnoticed in millions of homes across America, but with one shocking twist. The 1944 Lincoln wheat penny. At first glance, this one shows signs of age, carrying a dark black shade across its surface. That natural toning, which comes from years of oxidation, actually makes it even more fascinating, because it tells us this coin has lived through history, touched countless hands, and now carries a story of survival. The year 1944 was no ordinary year for America. The world was still engulfed in the Second World War, and the United States Mint was under pressure. Just the year before, in 1943, pennies were struck in steel instead of copper to save materials for the war effort. Those steel cents became a sensation and a headache because they rusted easily and confused people at the checkout counter. In 1944, the mint returned to striking pennies in copper, using leftover shell casings from the battlefield. Imagine that! Your 1944 penny may have been struck from the recycled brass of ammunition shells. That alone gives it a story like no other coin in US history. Now, let's talk condition. The one we're looking at is in fine condition, meaning the details of Lincoln's face and the wheat stalks on the reverse are still visible, though softened from circulation. The black shade on its surface is actually a form of natural patina, and for some collectors, that unique coloring adds character and desirability. While a heavily worn 1944 penny might bring only 5 to 10 cents, this fine condition example could already draw offers of $3 to $10. That's dozens of times its face value. But here's where the excitement ramps up. Higher grades are where the money starts rolling in. In uncirculated condition, with bright red luster, the 1944 wheat penny can command anywhere from $50 to over $500, depending on quality. And that's just for the standard version. The real shocker lies in the rare varieties and mint errors. The 1944 steel penny, for example, a minting mistake where leftover steel planchets were struck instead of copper, has been known to sell for hundreds of thousands of dollars. In fact, some of the finest examples have fetched over $400,000 at auction, but even copper 1944 pennies with errors can be extremely valuable. Imagine spotting a double die obverse where Lincoln's profile or the date appears doubled, or an off-center strike where part of the design is missing. These can send values soaring to $50,000, $100,000, or even more in certain cases. That's the magic of coins like these. They may look ordinary to the untrained eye, but a tiny difference can turn them into life-changing treasures. So what makes a 1944 penny valuable? It comes down to three things: condition, rarity, and errors. A fine condition black-toned example like this one is already desirable to collectors building out their World War II-era sets. But if you happen to find a bright red and circulated 1944 penny, or better yet, one of the legendary steel errors, you could be holding one of the most valuable pennies in existence. This is why every wheat penny is worth a second look. That dark black shade that others might ignore could be hiding something extraordinary. And just wait, because the next coin we're about to reveal takes rarity and value to an even higher level. Moving deeper into our journey, we come across a coin that takes us more than a century back in time. The 1918 Lincoln wheat penny. At first sight, in bad condition, this coin might not impress the casual observer. Its surfaces are worn smooth, its details faded, and it carries the heavy marks of a coin that truly lived its life in circulation. But here's the shocker: even a penny in this rough shape can hold a story, and in some cases, shocking value. Think about the year 1918 for just a moment. America was just coming out of the First World War. The world was changing, soldiers were returning home, and pennies like this one were the very coins jingling in the pockets of Americans during that uncertain and hopeful time. To hold a 1918 wheat penny, even in bad condition, is to hold a piece of living history, a coin that survived more than 100 years of commerce, travel, and hands exchanging it countless times. Now, let's talk design. On the obverse, we see the enduring portrait of Abraham Lincoln, though in a worn example like this, much of his face and coat may appear faded. On the reverse, the wheat ears design, which collectors love for its classic and simple beauty, may be only partly visible. But here's the magic: the date is still there, and that 1918 tells collectors everything they need to know. So what about value? A heavily circulated, bad condition 1918 wheat penny might sell for 25 to 50 cents. That's not life-changing money, but remember, that's the lowest end of the spectrum. Move up to a coin in very fine condition, and prices jump quickly into the $10 to $25 range. In extremely fine or uncirculated condition, values climb dramatically, often reaching $100, $200, or even higher. And for the absolute top-graded red examples, the kind that glow as if they were struck yesterday, collectors have paid thousands of dollars. But the real wow factor comes when we talk about rare varieties and mint errors from 1918. This year is known for some dramatic double die obverse errors, where the date and lettering appear clearly double. A bad condition coin with such an error could still sell for hundreds, but in higher grades, these errors have brought in jaw-dropping prices, sometimes over $50,000. Then there are off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and die cracks that make each coin a one-of-a-kind piece. Combine one of these rare errors with the age of the coin, and you're suddenly looking at values soaring into the six-figure range. Yes, it's shocking a coin most people would write off as worthless junk could actually be worth $450,000 or more to the right collector. This is what makes the 1918 penny so thrilling. It's over 100 years old, steeped in history, and even in bad condition, it commands respect from collectors who understand its rarity. The lesson is simple. Never overlook a wheat penny just because it looks worn. That old, tired coin might be the very treasure that changes everything. And as incredible as the 1918 is, trust me when I say the next coin on our list raises the stakes even higher, with even more unbelievable values that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Our next coin takes us into the late 1930s, a time when America was still pulling itself out of the Great Depression, and the rumblings of a Second World War were already being felt overseas. Right in the middle of this uncertain period, the Denver Mint struck the 1938D Lincoln Wheat Penny, and it's one of those coins that, on the surface, seems simple, but once you dig deeper, it can shock you with its rarity and value. The coin we're looking at here is in fine condition. That means the wear is noticeable, but the design is still sharp enough for Lincoln's profile to stand out, and the famous wheat ears on the back are clearly defined. The small D mint mark below the date tells us this penny was struck in Denver, which automatically adds an extra layer of collector interest. Unlike the Philadelphia Mint, which pumped out huge quantities of pennies, the Denver Mint produced smaller numbers, making the 1938D a scarcer find. Now here's where the story gets interesting. Only about 20 million of these coins were struck. A small number compared to other years where production ran into the hundreds of millions. That alone gives this penny a built-in rarity, especially when you consider how many have been lost or damaged in the 80-plus years since they were minted. So when a collector spots that tiny D, they know they're holding something special, in fine condition, like the one we have. The 1938D penny might fetch anywhere from $2 to $5. Not life-changing money yet, but hold on, because as we move into higher grades, the values climb dramatically. In extremely fine or almost uncirculated condition, you could be looking at $20 to $50. And in full red uncirculated condition, prices can jump to $500 or even $1,000. That's already incredible for a coin most people would dismiss as just a penny. But here's where the wow factor explodes. Rare mint errors on the 1938D can push values into shocking six-figure territory. There are documented double die obverses where the date and lettering appear doubled, off-center strikes where part of Lincoln's head is missing, and even repunched mint marks where the D was stamped more than once. Collectors absolutely love these errors because each one is unique, and they're willing to pay huge amounts for them. Some of the most dramatic examples have sold at auction for over $250,000, and in a few cases, the bidding has soared past $450,000. That's right, a coin struck for just 1 cent, now worth nearly $500,000, simply because of rarity, error, and demand. So what makes the 1938D valuable? It's that perfect storm of low mintage, historical context, and the potential for spectacular errors. Even in fine condition, this coin has a charm that collectors recognize. And if you're lucky enough to find a higher grade version, or a rare error, you could be holding a piece of treasure that changes the game entirely. This is why every wheat penny deserves a second look, especially those with a D mint mark. They might look ordinary to most people, but to a collector, they're pure gold. And just wait, because the next coin we're about to reveal takes us even further back in history, with values that will leave you speechless. Now, we come to a coin that's over a century old, and though its surface tells a story of long use, it carries a hidden value that could shock anyone who underestimates it. The 1923 Lincoln Wheat Penny, the one we're looking at here, has no fine condition. Its surfaces are dark, toned with a deep black shade, its details worn down from decades of circulation. To many people, this coin might look like pocket change that's barely worth keeping. But here's where the wow factor comes in. This penny, despite its humble, worn appearance, can still pack a punch in the collector market. Let's set the stage. The year was 1923. Calvin Coolidge was president. America was enjoying the roaring 20s. Jazz filled the air, and fortunes were being made in the stock market. Through all this, ordinary Americans carried Lincoln wheat pennies just like this one in their pockets every single day. Think about it. This very coin could have paid for a loaf of bread, a ride on a trolley, or even a newspaper reporting on the exciting, booming world of the 1920s. That connection to history alone makes it extraordinary. Now, here's the rarity factor. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 74 million of these pennies in 1923. That sounds like a lot, but survival rates are much lower, especially for coins in high grades. Most were worn down in circulation, and very few were saved in pristine condition. That's why collectors today are desperate to find better preserved examples. Even in a dark, heavily worn state, like this one, collectors may pay 25 to 50 cents, already many times its face value. But don't stop there, because here's where the excitement builds. In grades like very fine or extremely fine, prices climb into the $15 to $30 range. Take it further, into uncirculated condition, and now, you're talking hundreds of dollars, often $200 to $500 for bright red examples. And here comes the shocker. Some of the top-graded 1923 wheat pennies have fetched more than $10,000 at auction. That's $10,000 for a single cent struck over 100 years ago. But as always, the real treasure lies in the rare errors. Imagine finding a 1923 penny with a dramatic double die obverse, where Lincoln's profile or the date appears doubled. Or picture one struck off center, leaving a blank crescent of planchet showing. These errors can turn a simple penny into a one-of-a-kind collectible. Some of the most spectacular examples have gone well past 100,000, and in certain jaw-dropping cases, values have even soared near the $500,000 mark. Yes, a single penny, dark and humble as it may appear, becoming worth $450,000 or more because of its uniqueness. So, what makes the 1923 penny valuable? It's the age, the historical story it carries, the condition in which it survives, and above all, the chance that it holds a rare mint error. Even a black-shaded, heavily circulated example like this one has appealed to collectors who crave every date in the wheat penny series. This coin teaches us something powerful. Never overlook a penny just because it looks dull or worn. That black shade that others might dismiss as damage could be sitting on top of a piece of history worth an unimaginable fortune. And if you thought this was surprising, just wait, because the next coin on our list takes rarity to an entirely different level, and its potential value might just leave you speechless. Now, we move to a penny that carries us into the mid-1930s, during the tail end of the Great Depression. The 1935 Lincoln wheat penny. The one we're looking at here is in fine condition, which means it has visible detail. Lincoln's face and coat are still clear. The wheat stalks on the reverse are sharp enough to stand out. And although it's seen its share of circulation, this coin still has character that collectors crave. But the year 1935 was a pivotal time in American history. Franklin D. Roosevelt was president, and the nation was deep in the New Deal era, with sweeping reforms reshaping everyday life. Pennies like this one passed through the hands of farmers, factory workers, and shopkeepers as America worked its way out of one of the hardest economic times in history. That alone gives the 1935 penny an incredible backstory. Now, let's talk rarity. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 245 million of these coins, which makes it sound common. But here's the twist. The majority of those coins were spent, worn down, lost, or destroyed over the decades. Surviving examples in collectible condition are fewer than you'd expect. That's why even a fine condition piece like this still carries premium value over its face. At this level, you're looking at about $1 to $3, already many times what it's worth as money. But hold on, because the higher the grade, the more shocking the jump. In extremely fine or about uncirculated condition, values soar into the $10 to $25 range. Move up into full uncirculated with strong red luster, and suddenly, you're talking about $150, $250, and in some cases, well over $500. And then comes the jaw dropper. The highest graded red examples, with virtually no flaws, have brought thousands of dollars at auction. Imagine holding a coin struck for just a penny, but collectors fighting to pay over $10,000 to add it to their set. But that's not the end of the story. The real wow factor of the 1935 penny lies in its rare mint errors. This year is known for some fascinating varieties, including double die obverses, off-center strikes, and repunched mint marks from Denver and San Francisco issues. If you spot a 1935 penny with such an error, even in fine condition, you could be looking at hundreds of dollars. In uncirculated grades, these same errors have sold for tens of thousands. And yes, in some cases, spectacular errors have rocketed values past $450,000. Just imagine the disbelief of finding such a coin sitting in an old jar of change. So, what makes the 1935 wheat penny valuable? It's the combination of history, condition, rarity, and above all, those once-in-a-lifetime errors that make collectors' jaws hit the floor. A fine condition example like this is already a piece of history worth holding onto. But if you happen upon a rare error or a blazing red uncirculated version, you could be staring at a life-changing fortune. This coin proves, once again, that pennies are never just pennies. Each one has the potential to unlock an incredible story and an even more incredible price tag. And don't go anywhere, because the final coin on our list is the climax of them all, the rarest, the most valuable, and the one that could shock you beyond belief. And here we are, the grand finale, the climax of our list, a coin that every collector dreams of finding and one that could stop your heart if you ever spot it in your own collection. The 1955D Lincoln Wheat Penny with a brilliant red shade. A T. First glance, this penny is breathtaking. The red shade tells us it has been preserved in incredible condition, almost as if it rolled fresh off the Denver mint presses yesterday. The luster glows with that fiery copper brilliance, the kind collectors will pay any price to own. Unlike the dull brown or black-toned coins we've seen earlier, this 1955D red wheat penny radiates quality, and that's exactly where the shocking value begins. Now, let's step back into history. The year was 1955. America was booming. In the post-war era, rock and roll was rising, cars were getting faster, and families were moving into the suburbs. Amidst this cultural explosion, the Denver Mint struck over 563 million Lincoln wheat pennies. That's a massive number, and it makes you wonder, how could one be worth so much? But here's the twist: out of those hundreds of millions, only a fraction survived in pristine red condition. The rest circulated, dulled, and lost their brilliance. That's why collectors go wild when they see one glowing red like this dot in circulated condition. A 1955D wheat penny might be worth just a few cents, but when you hold one in brilliant red uncirculated condition, the value skyrockets. Even mid-level red examples can bring $50 to $200. Climb higher into the top grades, coins graded Ms. 66 or Ms. 67 red, and the prices explode into the thousands. Imagine a single cent suddenly commanding $5,000 to $15,000 just because of its shade and condition. But here's where the wow factor goes off the charts. While most people talk about the famous 1955 double-die penny from Philadelphia, what many don't realize is that the Denver Mint also produced its share of rare and spectacular error coins. Some 1955D examples have been discovered with dramatic, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, and even double dies. These are the kinds of errors that collectors fight tooth and nail to acquire, and when they appear in blazing red condition, the values can be staggering. We're talking $100,000, $250,000, and in the most jaw-dropping cases, over $450,000. That's nearly $500,000 for a coin struck as a single cent. So what makes this 1955D red wheat penny valuable? It's the combination of rarity, condition, color, and those once-in-a-lifetime mint errors that send collectors into a frenzy. Every detail from the blazing copper glow to the sharp D mint mark tells us this coin is special, and it proves yet again that the tiniest details can mean the difference between pocket change and a life-changing fortune. And there you have it, 7 Lincoln wheat pennies that look humble, ordinary, even worn. But when you know what to look for, they transform into treasures that can be worth thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even close to $500,000. Every single one of these coins carries a story, a piece of history, and a value that shocks the imagination. So the next time you see a wheat penny in your change, take a closer look, because what might seem like just 1 cent could actually be the rarest, most valuable discovery of your life. And if this video left you saying, wow, then make sure to subscribe to Worth Coin right now, because trust me, there are even bigger surprises waiting in the world of coins, and you don't want to miss the next treasure reveal.
Might just outshine the last. And before we get started, make sure to subscribe to Worth Coin so you never miss out on discovering the rare treasures that could be hiding right under your nose. The very first coin on our list may surprise you. At first glance, it looks like nothing special at all. A 1974 Lincoln penny, darkened with time, almost black in color, worn down from circulation, and in overall bad condition. Most people would see this coin and toss it aside, maybe even think it's damaged beyond any real worth. But here's where the shock sets in. This ordinary-looking penny hides one of the most fascinating stories in U.S. coin history. The year 1974 was an experimental time at the U.S. Mint. Copper prices were climbing, and the Mint wanted to cut costs. So, they began striking pennies in aluminum instead of copper. Millions of aluminum test coins were made, but Congress quickly rejected the idea, and the Mint recalled nearly all of them for destruction. Only a handful escaped. Today, a genuine 1974 aluminum penny is so rare that it can command values soaring past $250,000 and even higher depending on condition. Imagine that, a single cent, suddenly worth more than a brand new luxury car. Now, you may be wondering, what about a coin like this, a regular 1974 penny, badly worn, black in color? Well, here's the twist. Condition is not the only factor that drives value. While a circulated 1974 copper penny usually isn't worth more than face value, error versions and special striking varieties can change everything. There are double die obverses where Lincoln's date and motto appear doubled, off-center strikes where the design is missing huge portions of detail, and transitional errors where a coin might have been struck on the wrong planche. These rare mistakes can catapult a simple penny into the thousands, even when it looks worn or discolored. In fact, a circulated 1974 Lincoln cent with a dramatic off-center strike has been known to sell for over $10,000 at auction. And if you happen to find one struck on aluminum or another experimental metal, the sky's the limit. One such coin is rumored to have nearly reached $500,000 in private sales. That's right, $500,000. For a penny, most people would never give a second look. The dark, black color of your coin could be the result of decades of exposure, environmental damage, or even a chemical reaction. But here's the thing. Collectors sometimes find beauty in unusual toning. A unique appearance can make a coin stand out, especially if paired with a rare mint error. That's what makes it so important not to dismiss even the ugliest-looking coin in your collection. Sometimes, what seems like junk could secretly be a jackpot. Think about it for a moment. How many times have you handled a 1974 penny? Probably countless times. But the truth is, buried among the billions minted are a select few that can deliver life-changing money. In uncirculated condition, with a brilliant red luster, a 1974 Lincoln cent can already fetch $1,000 to $5,000, depending on the strike and grade. Add a dramatic error, and that number can leap past $50,000. And in the rarest case, an authentic 1974 struck in aluminum. You're suddenly looking at the kind of payday most people only dream of. Moving on to our next coin, we have a 1973 D Lincoln penny. At first glance, it's in rough shape. Worn flat from years of circulation, scratched, and in what collectors would simply call bad condition. Most people would toss this coin in a change jar without giving it a second thought. But the truth is, even a penny that looks completely worthless can hide a secret that could shock you. The year 1973 was the calm before a storm in American coinage. The mint in Denver, marked with that little D under the date, struck billions of pennies in copper. But here's where it gets interesting. During this time, the mint was experimenting with new metal compositions because copper was becoming expensive. A few rare 1973 pennies may have been struck on leftover experimental planchets from these tests, and those are the kinds of errors that can change an ordinary coin into one worth a staggering fortune. Collectors are constantly on the lookout for 1973 D errors. Double-die obverse varieties are out there, where the date or "In God We Trust" appears doubled under magnification. Some pennies show a dramatic off-center strike, with Lincoln's face sliding halfway off the coin. Others have been discovered struck on the wrong planchet altogether. A dime blank, a foreign coin blank, or even steel. When these rare mistakes surface, their values explode. One 1973-D penny with a dramatic double strike fetched more than $35,000 at auction. Another off-metal error sold privately for over $100,000. And in gem uncirculated condition, with a rare variety, these coins can break into the high six figures. Yes, a penny worth more than most houses. Now, let's talk about condition. You might be looking at this 1973 D and thinking, it's so worn. What could it possibly be worth? But here's the catch. Even in bad condition, if it carries a dramatic mint error, it's gold. Collectors often care less about wear. When an error is so unique, it becomes a once-in-a-lifetime find. For example, an off-center 1973 D penny with environmental damage still sold for thousands. Why? Because rarity trumps condition when the error is undeniable. Even regular 1973-D pennies in pristine mint state with a bright red finish can be surprisingly valuable. Some of the highest graded examples have sold for $5,000 to $10,000. And that's without an error. Add a rare doubling, off-metal strike, or transitional mistake, and suddenly, we're talking prices that can climb into the $250,000 to $400,000 range. Imagine someone dropping a penny like that on the sidewalk. It sounds insane, but history proves it has happened. The Denver Mint was a workhorse in 1973, striking over 3 billion pennies. That massive output left plenty of room for errors to slip through. And with so many coins produced, collectors today know that gems and rarities are still out there, hiding in plain sight. That's why it's so thrilling to search. Every single 1973 D penny you hold has the chance, however slim, to be a record-breaking discovery. Next up, we have a 1976 Lincoln penny. Now, this one is a little different from the last two. It isn't beaten beyond recognition. Instead, it sits in fine condition, with clear details still visible on Lincoln's portrait, and the date easy to read. At first glance, it seems like just another pocket cent from the bicentennial era. But hold on, because the truth about the 1976 penny is something that shocks even seasoned collectors. The year 1976 was one of celebration for America. The nation marked its bicentennial, 200 years since independence, and the U.S. Mint struck special commemorative designs on quarters, halves, and dollars. But here's the strange part. The humble Lincoln penny never received a bicentennial design. Millions of Americans expected to see a special version, but the Mint decided not to redesign the cent. That decision makes the 1976 penny a fascinating piece of history. It became the coin that should have been something more. Now, in fine condition like this, a regular 1976 penny doesn't sound like much. Usually just face value, maybe a few cents to a casual buyer. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Collectors have discovered incredible errors and unique examples from this year that have turned ordinary-looking 1,976 cents into treasures worth tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands. One of the most famous is the 1976 double-die obverse, where the date and lettering are doubled in striking clarity. Another is the off-center strike, where Lincoln's face is shifted dramatically off the plancher. These oddities command serious money. A dramatic double die can sell for over $25,000, while a clean off-center strike can fetch more than $50,000. Even more shocking are the transitional errors, coins struck on the wrong blanks. A few 1976 cents have been discovered struck on dime planchers, and those are easily six-figure fines. Imagine finding one of those in your change. A penny that's secretly worth $150,000 to $300,000. And don't forget about condition. While this example is fine, meaning it has wear but is still decent, the real shockers come from mint state red coins. In pristine, brilliant red condition, graded MS67 or higher, a 1976 Lincoln penny has reached values of over $7,500 at auction. That's for a regular cent. No error needed. Add an error, and suddenly, you're staring at numbers pushing beyond $500,000 for a single coin. Think about that. A 1-cent piece struck during America's bicentennial year, turning into a life-changing fortune. It's almost poetic. In 1976, the U.S. Mint gave special treatment to nearly every other coin, but not the penny. And yet, the penny from that year, through rarity, errors, and condition, has become one of the most thrilling coins to hunt. It teaches us that even the overlooked pieces can become the most valuable. Now, let's move on to a coin that carries one of the biggest secrets in modern penny history. The 1982 D. Lincoln cent. At first glance, this one looks pretty standard. It's in fine condition, showing some circulation but with Lincoln's portrait and the date still standing out clearly. But don't let its ordinary appearance fool you. The 1982 penny is one of the most talked about coins in the collecting world, and certain varieties from this year can skyrocket in value to levels that leave collectors absolutely stunned. Here's the background. In 1982, the U.S. Mint made a massive change to the penny. For more than a century, pennies were made mostly of copper. But by the early 1980s, copper prices had climbed so high that making a 1-cent coin actually cost more than 1 cent. So, halfway through 1982, the Mint switched from the traditional 95% copper composition to a new plancher, 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. That's the penny we still use today. Now, here's where the treasure hunt begins. In 1982, the mint struck both copper and zinc pennies, and to make things more complicated, they made them with two different date styles: large date and small date. Add in the fact that coins were minted at both Philadelphia and Denver, and suddenly you have 7 official varieties from just 1 year. But one incredibly rare coin takes the spotlight: the 1982 D small date struck in copper. This coin is legendary. For decades, collectors believed it didn't even exist. No examples had ever been confirmed. But in 2016, the first one surfaced, and it sold for nearly $18,000. Then, another was discovered, and that one sold for over $20,000. Experts believe only a handful exist, making it one of the rarest modern Lincoln cents in history. Today, the 1982 D small date copper penny could easily break $100,000 if one in high-grade condition hits the auction block. That's the kind of jaw-dropping number that turns collectors' heads. Now, let's put this into perspective. You're looking at a fine-condition 1982 D penny. On its own, in the common copper or zinc varieties, it's usually worth just a cent or two. But here's the kicker. Unless you weigh it, you don't know which one you have. Copper pennies weigh about 3.1 grams, while zinc pennies weigh 2.5 grams. A simple scale can reveal if your 1982 D is just another pocket cent, or one of the rarest and most valuable pennies of the last 50 years. Imagine that moment. You drop a 1982 D on the scale, expecting nothing. But instead of 2.5 grams, it shows 3.1. Your heart skips a beat. Could it be? If it's the elusive small date copper, you may be holding a 6-figure fortune in your hand, all from a coin most people overlook without a second thought. And it's not just that variety. Other 1982-D errors exist as well. Off-center strikes, double dies, and transitional planchet errors can all bring values into the thousands, even in circulated grades. Some uncirculated zinc examples with the right variety and blazing red color have sold for several $1,000s each. Now, let's take a look at another coin that might seem completely ordinary, but has a story that could leave you speechless. The 1978 Lincoln penny. This one is in fine condition, meaning it's been in circulation with a bit of wear, but still showing Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the familiar details of the memorial reverse. To most people, it looks like just another cent, nothing more. But the truth is, the 1978 penny can hold secrets that transform it from pocket change into a staggering treasure. The late 1970s were an important time for the Lincoln cent. The design hadn't changed in decades, but the mint was under pressure as inflation rose and the cost of copper climbed. Just 1 year later, in 1979, the U.S. Mint began preparations for massive shifts in coin production, setting the stage for the changes that would define the 1980s. That makes the 1978 penny one of the last true copper cents of its era. Struck in 95% copper before the dramatic transition to zinc in the following decade. On its own, a 1978 penny in fine condition is usually only worth face value. But what makes this coin extraordinary are the rare errors and high-grade examples that slip through the cracks of history. For instance, a 1978 penny with a strong double-die obverse, where Lincoln's date, "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," is doubled, can fetch values of $20,000 or more. Even more shocking are off-metal strikes. There have been reports of 1978 cents struck on dime planchets, producing a smaller, lighter penny with incomplete designs. Those kinds of errors have sold for well over $100,000. And let's not forget the off-center strikes. Imagine holding a penny where Lincoln's face is cut in half, with a huge blank space showing. These kinds of dramatic mint errors can easily bring $5,000 to $25,000 depending on condition. The rarest double strikes, where the coin is struck twice in slightly different positions, can push values even higher, with some examples rumored to have broken the $250,000 mark in private collections. Even without errors, pristine 1978 pennies can be worth a small fortune. In the highest mint state grades, with brilliant red luster untouched by circulation, they have sold for more than $7,500 at auction. That's for a coin most people would never even bother to look at twice. Now, why does this matter? Because coins like the 1978 Lincoln cent remind us that value often hides in plain sight. People handle these pennies every day, unaware that a rare variety or error could be hiding under their nose. And here's the emotional punch. The older generation, those who grew up in the 1970s and still remember using these coins daily, could very well have a life-changing treasure sitting in a jar, untouched, for decades. Think about it. One tiny cent, struck in 1978, could carry enough value to pay off a mortgage, buy a dream car, or even set up a retirement fund. The shock of that possibility is what makes coin collecting so exciting. It's the thrill of never knowing which coin will turn out to be the jackpot. And finally, we come to the last coin in our lineup, the 1981 Lincoln penny. At first glance, it's in fine condition, showing some circulation wear but still sharp enough to display Abraham Lincoln's portrait, the date, and the memorial reverse with clarity. Most people would pass this off as just another cent, the kind they've handled thousands of times without a second thought. But here's the twist. The 1981 penny is far more significant than most collectors realize, and in some cases, it can be worth a small fortune. The year 1981 was a turning point in American coinage. It was the final full year that pennies were struck using the traditional 95% copper composition. By 1982, the U.S. Mint switched to a cheaper zinc core with a thin copper plating. The pennies we're still using today. That makes 1981 the end of an era for copper cents, and collectors treasure it as the last chapter of the original Lincoln Memorial series before major changes took place. But the real shock value comes when we talk about errors and high-grade examples. The 1981 Lincoln cent exists in multiple varieties, including bold double dies, off-center strikes, and transitional planchet errors. Some 1981 pennies have been found struck on dime blanks, leaving them smaller, thinner, and incredibly rare. Others were double-struck or misaligned, creating dramatic visual errors that collectors are willing to pay thousands for. One spectacular 1981 error penny sold for more than $30,000, while another unusual transitional strike broke past $100,000 at auction. Now, here's where things get really exciting. In fine condition, a regular 1981 penny is worth only face value, just 1 cent. But in pristine, uncirculated condition, with blazing red surfaces and a high grade from a top grading service, these coins can sell for thousands. Some of the finest known 1981 pennies have commanded prices over $7,000 at auction. And if you add a dramatic mint error into the mix, that number can explode into the six-figure range. We're talking $250,000 or more for a coin most people wouldn't even glance at twice. Think about it. 1981 was the last year Americans were unknowingly carrying true copper pennies in their pockets. After that, the coin changed forever. That simple fact gives every 1981 penny a sense of historical weight. It marks the end of the line, the final breath of an old tradition, And because of that, collectors will always chase them, especially rare errors and top-condition pieces. Imagine the thrill of reaching into a coin jar, pulling out a penny from 1981, and realizing it's not just copper, but a rare error worth tens of thousands of dollars. The idea that such life-changing value could be hiding in something so small is exactly why coin collecting has that irresistible wow factor. So while this 1981 penny in fine condition may look ordinary, never underestimate it. Whether it's a doubled die, an off-metal strike, or simply a high-grade survivor, the value of this coin can leap into ranges that make jaws drop. It is the perfect reminder that treasures don't always glitter. Sometimes they hide in the most common of places. And that brings us to the end of our incredible journey through 6 ultra-rare Abraham Lincoln pennies that could be worth a fortune. From 1974 to 1981, each of these coins carries a shocking story, a hidden history, and a chance at life-changing value. If you've enjoyed this ride into the unbelievable world of pennies, make sure you subscribe to Worth Coin, because you never know. The next coin we uncover could be the one sitting in your very own pocket.